It's a fun-filled Formula One festival by the seaside. Welcome along to qualifying as the Dutch Grand Prix returns to the Formula One calendar as round 13 in this 2021 season. We are back at Zandvoort and it has been absolutely epic so far this weekend, but now it gets serious on this transformed circuit. So many great corners, so many wonderful bankings. The circuit has come up to a grade A standard and it is looking splendid in the sunshine this afternoon as the fans use sustainable transport to reach the Zandvoort circuit each day. The train station has been rebuilt, park and ride schemes from all over Holland, and lots of bikes here as well. But for 2.6 miles you want a Formula One car around this track, not a bicycle. 2 DRS zones along the main straight and the run down towards turn 11 of the chicane. The elevation only 8.9 metres, but it is up and down, relentless throughout the lap. In 1977, James Hunt was leading the race. Mario Andretti was trying to overtake him at the first turn. Hunt would crash out, Andretti would carry on for 14 more laps. And in 1985, this is Niki Lauda and Alain Prost giving McLaren a 1-2 finish, as they had in 84 and as I'm sure they'll hope to have in 2021. The tyres for this weekend, the hard is the C1, the medium is the C2 and the soft is the C3. It's the hardest compound tyres in the Pirelli range. We've seen an awful lot of marbles around the circuit though. Is anyone brave enough to go out in Q2 on that medium tyre and try and make it into Q3? The atmosphere has been turned up to the max, which is unsurprising because 99.9% of this crowd are here to see one man and one man only, and that is Max Verstappen. So how would you be feeling, Jenson Button, if you were in his shoes at the moment?
Very excited after FP3, super fast lap, but having this crowd behind you. I mean, I loved the British Grand Prix, having the British support, but for him, he is the only Dutch driver here.
Yeah.
So pretty much every single person in the grandstand will be cheering for Max. A lot of support, but also a lot of pressure.
The last Dutchman to race in his home Grand Prix a long time ago was Jan Lammers, who's now in charge of the circuit here, so knows what it's like to race in his home race. Whether Max has got any advice from Jan Lammers, I'm not quite sure. What advice could you give to Max Verstappen except go out and try and enjoy it, because if he gets on pole, well, you'll hear the cheers from one side of the North Sea to Skegness on the other side of the North Sea, back home in the UK.
Yeah, you will, and yeah, it's been a fantastic atmosphere. It doesn't matter if you're Dutch or you're British. You know, it's been a lovely weekend so far. What a beautiful circuit. I raced back here back in 1999 in F3, and it felt faster than an F3 car. So in an F1 car, it must feel insane.
So let's bring you up to speed with what's been happening so far today. And as it was in FP1 and FP2, we had a red flag this time because Carlos Sainz crashed in his Ferrari. They are racing against time to rebuild that Ferrari to get him out in time for Q1, which starts, as you can see, in about 1 minute and 10 seconds. The good news, no gearbox change, no grid penalty for Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, when we saw the incident, it's like, oh, I so hope he hasn't got a gearbox change, because that's done really. But they've worked very hard. These mechanics are the best in the world, and I'm really hoping this car is ready, because we want 20 cars flying around in qualifying, don't we?
We certainly do, and there he is, the man who started from pole in 5 of the last 6 races. He has the unique achievements in his hands this weekend to win one weekend in the country of his birth and then win the next weekend in the country of his nationality. That is a double Dutch delight for Max Verstappen.
It is, and I used to race against his mum, actually, who's obviously from Belgium, and father from the Netherlands, so yes, very unique opportunity, but he has to beat that man, Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, only one pole in the last 8 races for Lewis Hamilton. Looks slightly off the pace in practice, but having lost so much time because of that oil system failure on Friday afternoon, that was to be expected, and he was saying expect more from Lewis to come in this session.
Yeah, he's on the back foot, definitely, and especially on a circuit he hasn't driven for many years and never driven an F1 car, but if anyone can get on the pace for qualifying, it's Lewis Hamilton.
And you're thinking to yourself, what on earth is car number 88 doing instead of car number 7 in the Alfa Romeo garage? Kimi Raikkonen tested positive for COVID, showing those symptoms, which is good to hear, but isolating in his hotel room. He'll miss the rest of this weekend, potentially next weekend in Monza as well. So in the week that he announces retirement from Formula One at the end of this season, Kimi can't add to his tally this weekend of 341 Grand Prix starts. Robert Kubica will stand in for him for the rest of the weekend. His first experience of qualifying since Abu Dhabi in 2019. But in FP3, he looked fairly accomplished.
He did, and easy for him jumping in the car on a Saturday morning. The other drivers have all had sort of 2 hours of practice, but yes, you know, he's just got to get there and enjoy it. You know, enjoy the weekend. It's physically demanding, the circuit. We've had a lot of drivers complaining, well, not complaining, just saying how difficult it is on the neck. Very physical, it's never ending. So he's going to find it tough, but I just really hope he enjoys this weekend.
So the man from Krakow can quite literally try and go for pole later this afternoon, and the Iceman is self-isolating. That's the news from Alfa Romeo. For the rest of the news, down in the pit lane, Ted Kravitz.
Very good, very good. David Croft, ladies and gentlemen. He's here all weekend. No, he really is. So, yeah, I mean, Kubica was actually under a second slower than Giovinazzi, teammate, wasn't he? So that was really not that bad. We've had Nikita Mazepin first driver on track, closely followed by Mick Schumacher, and we have the Williams as well. But it's those Haas drivers and the Williams who are struggling, as is Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri. Pierre Gasly going quite well so far, but Yuki Tsunoda is having a bit of a troubled weekend so far. Let's see if he can get out of Q1. Carlos Sainz, they have just finished laser scanning just a couple of minutes before the start of the session. They were still laser scanning the car to make sure that all the bits were in the right places. So I think we expect him to see out no less than 5 minutes into this session, but we'll see what's going on. And finally, a quick line on Aston Martin. Lance Stroll 7th, Sebastian Vettel 8th in free practice 3 going into this session. Not bad at all. They're aiming for Q3.
Yeah, it's horses for courses. Drivers that we've seen go well at this track in the past have been going well at the track this weekend. Only 3 of them out there this afternoon have never raced competitively here. But it does give you a fair amount of confidence that you need, Jensen, having gone well in the past.
On this circuit, yes. Even if it was in another category, which it would have been for all of them, you know, it's very undulating, this circuit. There's a lot of blind crests, a lot of high-speed corners with no runoff. It's very unforgiving. That's the word I would use for Zandvoort. But it's a wonderful track, and I think they're all really enjoying putting the cars, you know, the cars on the limit around here.
Now this corner here, turn 9 into turn 10, could be quite tricky because the wind is getting up, and it's a big tailwind behind you.
It is, and we saw Sebastian Vettel in FP3 have a little whoopsie on the exit, bit of oversteer, probably caught by the wind, and I don't think he'll be the last.
As Tsunoda now makes his way into 13 and 14, and the banking increases all the way around that final turn. It's tough on the tyres, probably on the drivers next year in the race as well. And there's a time of a 1:11.947 then as he crosses the line. The last pole time here, Nelson Piquet in a Brabham in 1985 was a 1:11.07. Very different circuit back then, of course. That was his one and only pole that season. But Yuki Tsunoda 9/10 off that in these early stages. I dare say we'll be down to the low 1:11s by the time this man and the rest of the top 10 go for pole in a little while. But here he is onto the track. They will be rising to acclaim Max Verstappen all the way through when he gets to the grandstands. This is the one lap he can just take it easy on, though.
It is, you know, he doesn't want to take any risks. He knows he has the pace of the car in it himself. He won't be giving it the max. Probably engine mode to be a little bit turned down as well.
Well, they used to be able to turn up the engine modes, of course, during qualifying itself. That's not the case now. What engine modes you're running at this moment in time, you've got to run throughout the qualifying session and into the race itself. 6 sets of the soft compound tyres available, 5 new, 1 of them used. 1 new set of mediums, 1 that's been used, and 1 set of hards. What's interesting here, Jensen, is that Bottas and Hamilton, the Mercedes, going out initially on the medium compound tyre.
Yeah, it is really interesting, and I think it's because the soft tyre is working really well. Normally they would look at using the medium tyre. Look at the crowd.
He's not done anything yet. They're already standing up.
I love that. There he is warming his tyres, but no, I think they understand that this soft tyre is working. Normally they would go for the medium in Q2 so they can start the race on it, but I think it's going to be softs all the way.
Right, and all the way around 2.6 miles. Let's go and follow a lap with Max Verstappen and Jensen Button.
Into turn 1, very easy to lock the front inside here because of the camber of the corner. Nice smooth exit for him there into 1A and then into 2 where Sainz had his off. He is so wide around this corner. I love the way that they enter into turn 3. Great exit, a little bit of curb on the exit. Now it's flat all the way through this left, right, try and scrub as little time and speed as possible. A little lift through the right-hander here. Lovely corner here, but no runoff on the exit. Little left, little right, and now it's braking quite hard for this right-hand corner. Use all the road on the exit, and then you're flicking the car across to the right for the left-hander. A very tricky exit, as you said, because of the wind. No issues for Max whatsoever. Straight on the DRS, even when he's laterally loaded. Now he's braking for the chicane. Easy to lock the inside front there, but no, very smooth, using all the curve at the second apex. Good exit. A little bit of dust flying up there, and now he's close to home. Last corner, second to last corner, all over the curve, and now this is just a great corner. The banking is beautiful. The exit of the corner, you can see the crowd up through the gears, and there we have our fastest lap of the session.
We do, and Sergio Perez crossing the line 7/10 behind Max Verstappen, a 1:10.0 on the medium tyre. We're on board with Valtteri Bottas. You might have seen it, those eagle-eyed amongst you, that Carlos Sainz is out on the track as well. Ferrari have got that car out of the garage, and well done to them for that rebuild, as Bottas goes second fastest on the mediums, 4/10 behind Verstappen. Now, Hamilton a 10th behind Verstappen. Medium tyre to soft tyre, that then might throw, well, a whole question mark as to whether Mercedes really were struggling in practice or whether they were just sandbagging a bit.
Yeah, well, Max's lap looked very different to what we saw in FP3. It was a lot calmer. The rear wasn't moving around as much. I really don't think he's put the car on the limit yet, but I must say that is a great lap by Lewis, but also Pierre Gasly, P3, only 2/10 off of Max Verstappen.
Pierre Gasly has been making a habit of starting in the top 6 this season, 9 out of the 12 Grand Prix in 2021. He has been in the top 6. Sergio Perez, by comparison, only 7 times in the top 6 this year. And here's a man who's been making a habit of decent results in qualifying. Lando Norris goes 8th fastest overall, 7/10 off the pace in his McLaren, who last time out in qualifying led both Q1 and Q2 for the first time since 2012 as far as McLaren are concerned.
A lot of the cars in FP3 were going quicker on their second lap on the tyre. So they do a fast lap, then a slow down lap, recharge, and they go for lap 3. And I think a couple of them have that in the back of their mind, one being Max, I think Lando as well. So we'll see a massive jump in times, I think, for the second lap.
If you're new to F1, we talk about times and the fastest drivers, of course, but in Q1 we are interested, as we are in Q2, in the bottom 5. They are the drivers that will be eliminated from qualifying if they can't get out of that bottom 5, and with 10 minutes to go, Fernando Alonso hasn't set a lap time yet in that bottom 5, starts on his first flying lap. And you were talking, Jensen, about the wide lines going through turn 3. How wide does Fernando want to go? Locks up going in there and had to back out a bit.
I stepped back from the screen then. That was a close call, that one. That's the problem when you're doing such a wide line. Small little lock-up when you're in the wall, but that was beautiful by Fernando. He is fully on the limit. Lovely through that. A little bit wide from the apex, but very difficult to pick that apex.
But wide is best through turn 3?
Wide is best through turn 3. It has been for everyone. I think in the race you might have a few people trying to dive up the inside to get a move done, but not easy at all.
Right, on to a DRS zone for Fernando Alonso. It is a really short lap here, but the corners come at you thick and fast. The drop down here, well, it barely looks like a drop when you're riding on board, but it is quite severe.
It is. I mean, it's everywhere around this track. There isn't a flat piece of tarmac, I don't think. Even coming out the last corner, as you'll see here, there's a little rise, especially on the left-hand side. And as I said, you see the grandstand there just as you come through the corner, and a wonderful sea of orange.
As he crosses the line, what he'd like to see from that big screen on the outside of turn 1 is his finishing position after that lap. A 5th fastest to probably put Fernando Alonso in a very good move.
Yeah, and he would have looked at that screen as well. I always did as a driver. You're always looking for the screen in your position. But no, that was a relatively good lap in P6 for Fernando.
It's 6 apiece at Alpine this year in terms of the qualifying head-to-head. Esteban Ocon crosses the line 8th fastest, and he's round about 3/10 behind his teammate as Hamilton goes a little bit quicker. 110.114 for him, and he's less than a 10th off Max Verstappen. Ted, down to you.
But Mercedes are going to like this yellow tyre strategy, aren't they? That was their problem leading up in pre-practice 3, was that A, they couldn't get the tyres hot enough for the first couple of corners, and then they overheated towards the end. So much more stable tyre, this yellow one, and that's proved good results. That's very tight, much tighter than maybe Red Bull would have thought, even if Verstappen perhaps has got some left in hand.
Well, we were seeing improvements of half a second yesterday from the medium to the soft. That was the case. Hamilton suddenly becomes favourite for pole, but as Ted rightly says, how much is Max leaving in terms of sandbags in the sand dunes for these opening exchanges.
Yeah, very true. I think what's really exciting is the top 10 are within 7 tenths. That's the closest I've seen. I know it's a slightly shorter circuit than most, but that's really close. And it's Giovinazzi in P10.
Wow. So ahead then of Yuki Tsunoda, Nicholas Latifi, Carlos Sainz, an exploratory lap I would imagine initially for Carlos Sainz as they just check over it, make sure the car's okay, and then they'll be pushing a little harder towards the end of this session. Mazepin and Schumacher occupying the final 2 spots as they have done pretty much most of the races this year. That's not developing that car throughout 2021, concentrating instead on the big rule changes for next year. We're on board then with Carlos Sainz, beautiful flowing part of the circuit, this high speed as well.
Yeah, it is. It's wonderful, and it's a little bit bumpy that you don't see off car, do you? But you know, you can see there's a few bumps they have to deal with through them. Cars are pretty calm. Suspension on these cars are fantastic these days. No, there's it's going to be tough to get through to Q2. I think we're going to have Kubica right on the cusp, and I'm sure George is going to be fighting his way through to Q2. Hopefully, fighting his way through.
Yeah, replacing Kimi Raikkonen, who one of the 3 drivers that was actually born the last time we had a Dutch Grand Prix. 3 drivers that should have been on the grid who were born the last time we had the Dutch Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton being the other 2. So Robert Kubica, I think, would have been born back in 1985 when we were last here, as Sainz crosses the line and goes 8th fastest. So we'll be pleased with that. Nicholas Latifi moving out of the bottom 5 as well. He goes 9th fastest with just under 6 minutes to go, and Tsunoda into the top 10, which pushes Stroll and Vettel, who are still in the garage at this moment in time, down into that bottom 5. Vettel just coming out of the pits, along with Kubica, Mazepin and Schumacher. And you can just see the pounding that those tyres take when you ride the curves at the chicane.
I always love those slow-mo shots of the tyres and how much the bodywork on the car moves, the wings, the engine cover, everything's moving more than you would ever imagine.
Pays in life to be flexible, even if you are a Formula 1 car.
Are you flexible?
I'm as flexible as you'd like, but not bending.
I think the biggest surprise so far is the McLaren. They're both outside the top 10 and not a comfortable position to be in with 1 run to go.
But what is the cut-off time they're all aiming for that they think is a safe time to get through into Q2? Ted might have news on that.
A sort of high 110 really, a sort of high 110.75, something like that, which would be about the Giovinazzi level in P13 at the moment. So certainly Vettel on a 1:11.5, Vettel needs to find the best part of a second. Ready?
And a big track evolution, 1 second track evolution.
Yeah, exactly. So Vettel needs to find a second. How much of that can he find in track evolution, and how much is he going to have to really pull one out of the bag? The same for his teammate Lance Stroll.
So does Sebastian Vettel and his teammate Lance Stroll want to be out there at the moment, or would they rather be out there attempting these push laps in about 4 minutes time?
I personally think they have the pace, easy to get through. So they need a clear run. So you go out now. They've done the right thing. You never know what's going to happen. Everyone's pushing a bit harder at the end. It's easy to lock up, run wide, get a yellow or even a red flag, and then it's game over for him. So they've taken the right choice to head up now.
Get that banker lap in, and then see what transpires after that. Possibly we're watching Sebastian Vettel. Then he rides over the crest of the track, dropping down once more through Skyflock at turn 7. And Sebastian Vettel, well, he's there or thereabouts with a 24.6 through that first sector. Meanwhile, George Russell in 15th at the moment, a 24.3 in the first sector. He's been off the pace, George Russell.
Yeah, he has. And I don't think it's a circuit that's really suited the Williams, but he's 3 tenths up on Sebastian Vettel, who was 8th this morning in practice, so that's a surprise.
So Vettel is up on a time he needs to get out of the bottom 5. George Russell is maybe targeting top 10 as he goes 24.1 in the middle sector, still a 10th ahead of Sebastian Vettel. It's Mr. Saturday. Once again, George Russell comes good when it comes to qualifying. As Vettel now crosses the line, is it high 110s? It's a 110.7. That's going to put him right on the cusp. That might not be enough. We shall see. As George Russell crosses the line, goes 5th fastest for George Russell, who produced the qualifying lap potentially of the season in Spa last time out, to put his Williams on the front row for the first time since this man, Lance Stroll, did it in Monza in 2017. And Stroll, who we know has got the pace, He's just not finding it out there on the track. He is still in the bottom 5 with 2.5 minutes to go.
It's really strange. I thought those guys were going to be near the front, but George, I mean, I'm amazed at how quick he is in qualifying. I really do not know how he does it. Extreme talent, and we all await for where his future's going to be, but he deserves a car worthy of his talent.
There are some who say George Russell is very similar to you in his driving style, very sensitive with the inputs on the steering wheel, keeping it really smooth and beautiful, kind of foot control, throttle and brake.
I'm the one that's won the World Championship out of the two of us, but that's a massive compliment for me. So, no, I think I just don't know how he pulls that out. Every qualifying run, he's on it, and to put it P5, very, very impressive.
These might be the last few races that George Russell is qualifying in a Williams, expected to be driving for Mercedes for next season alongside Lewis Hamilton, leaving Valtteri Bottas potentially to go to Alfa Romeo to replace Kimi Raikkonen, and then who jumps in the Williams seats? Well, Alex Albon quite fancies it. You might have heard Christian Horner yesterday saying that Mercedes, Toto Wolff, not too happy about that, possibly trying to block Alex Albon going to Williams. I hope not, because I think Alex Albon deserves to be in F1, and I'd like to see him driving in a decent car for next year. As Hamilton and Bottas back out on the track, even though they're in the low 110s, they obviously think that it's worthwhile still being on there if there's a 1 second track evolution. Daniel Ricciardo is out there, he's got it all to do, and now Jensen, they're all queuing up because they want to be out there right in the last gasps of this qualifying one session to get the best usage of the track.
Yeah, the circuit is in the best condition it could possibly be for the end of Q1, and you know, Hamilton and Bottas are on the soft tyre, so you know, they might have gone out on the medium to start with, but they're playing it safe and throwing the soft at it to see, you know, making sure that they get through. They don't want to make that mistake.
Alonso, Russell, Gasly and Verstappen still in the garage, everyone else out on the track then, and hoping that they're going to get the start of these laps in before the checkered flag comes out. And there's an almighty queue taking place round about turn 13, involving about 7 or 8 cars, as we watch Daniel Ricciardo, who was a 24.5 through the first sector. That's 2 tenths down on Antonio Giovinazzi, who he's battling with to get out of Q1. We are now down to the last 10 seconds before the checkered flag. That queue should all make it across the line. Whether they've got the right gap or not, I'm not quite sure, as Perez starts his flying lap before the checkered flag comes out, and Giovinazzi puts in a very good middle sector, matches Daniel Ricciardo, but he's got 2 tenths in hand on Ricciardo through that first sector. Let's watch the Australian over the line as Sainz goes second fastest and jumps up into the top 2. Ricciardo crosses the line and gets well out of danger, goes up to 6th fastest. First car to take the checkered flag was Sergio Perez. Everyone else is on a flying lap now. Antonio Giovinazzi goes 4th fastest, so there's a lot of drivers going to be at risk here, even from Perez down to Sebastian Vettel, as we see Yuki Tsunoda next across the line. He goes 11th fastest. That pushes Perez a little bit further towards the drop. Lance Stroll will be next to try and get out of that bottom 5. He's gone for another lap on these soft compound tyres. Has it helped him? He's gone 11th fastest. Perez is in trouble there, as Esteban Ocon next across the line goes 6th fastest. Nicholas Latifi trying to get out of Q2 for the second, one in the second week running, goes 5th fastest. Now Lando Norris needs to get out of that bottom 5, and he does, but only just for Lando Norris, and Sergio Perez is out of qualifying. Told you he was at risk. Confirm that right now. Only 16th, while his teammate Max Verstappen is setting a top 3 time.
I mean, that was a massive surprise. You got the 2 Williams that got it. Latifi's 5th, and Perez is out. He's in the quickest car out there, and he's out.
This was the queue that I was talking about here, and Sebastian Vettel was trying to weave his way through, and that is 2 Hasses that have got in his way.
That was close. That was terrible.
Well, the thing is, this is a penalty coming. That was Nikita Mazepin, the one that really got in his way here. That's a penalty coming Mazepin's way. Of no consolation to Sebastian Vettel, who's down there in the bottom 5, out of qualifying on a fast lap, whilst others were trying to build a gap.
Yeah, and they had the pace this weekend, or we thought they had the pace this weekend, and Mazepin, yeah, in the way, but it's such a tricky situation that they're all queuing up, and he puts it alongside his teammate, which blocks the circuit for Sebastian.
And they're going to investigate that after the session.
We're out, Checo.
failure. They were so slow with these guys on the pit lane.
So Sergio Perez, I think, intimating there that people were queuing up to try and build a gap getting out of the pit lane.
I guess so. That's a disappointing start to the weekend for him after a pretty tough weekend in Spa.
Nikita Mazepin is out of qualifying. That incident involving him and Sebastian Vettel is going to be investigated after the session. Schumacher's out as well, as is Robert Kubica. Sebastian Vettel was held up, and Sergio Perez, the big shot in qualifying. Perez out, Norris only through by the skin of his teeth, and Charles Leclerc was the fastest car. To the first session of qualifying here at the Dutch Grand Prix, but not action-packed enough for this man, Sergio Perez, who's out. We can go straight to the Red Bull pit wall and join Christian Horner, the team principal. That is a big upset. You were expecting, I'm sure, 2 cars in Q3. What happened, Christian?
Yeah, it's disappointing. Unfortunately, I think he lost some time on the way out of the pit lane, and then he missed the line by a second. I think his out that was just that little bit too slow. So frustrating, because obviously we shouldn't have a car out in Q1.
We saw a big queue into turn 13. He was at the end of that queue, but he was being held up, you say, even before that. Is it time to stop kind of building these gaps in Formula One and to ensure that all drivers can get to the line, or is that just part and parcel of the sport?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I think it's such a short circuit, but yeah, 2020 vision, we should have sent him out a little earlier, but yeah, certainly a quicker outlap. You had enough space to start that. Unfortunately, he's missed it by about a second, so very frustrating.
Christian, are you surprised at how close the times are in Q1?
I think the circuit's ramping up quite a lot, but it is very close. I think it'll be very, very close with Mercedes. So the circuit's going to continue to ramp, I think, through this section. So when you see the jump that Williams made, obviously on that second set, it's quite impressive. Did
your eyebrows get raised a bit when Mercedes set those times on the medium tyres and were close to Max who was on the softs?
We know they're going to be quick, and they obviously improved their times on their second time run as well, which the medium has in there. So I think Max has still got time in the car, but we're going to find out very shortly.
Aren't we just? We'll be back with you after Q2. Thanks, Christian. Green light is on. Pit exit is open. Pierre Gasly will be going out at some stage, but everyone just waiting for a while. Unsurprisingly, the majority waiting for a while because of the way the track did ramp up right at the end. So, Max might as well go out for a little lap all by himself. Latifi's out there as well.
Yeah, it's tricky waiting to the end. That's the issue in Q1. There could be a yellow flag when everyone's pushing that hard and that many cars on track, so it's a big risk leaving it that late, but there's a massive reward as well if you get it right.
SkyQ customers, you can watch highlights of qualifying alongside the live action. Press your red button if you want to watch what happened in Q1 whilst we watch what happened in Q2 live. And whilst Max Verstappen is out there, I mentioned Nicholas Latifi as well. Q2 for the second consecutive race running after his exploits in the wet in Spa last week. Lando Norris, by the way, got into Q2 by 4/100ths of a second. I said it was the skin of his teeth. It really was.
Yeah, I think he was held up before the start of his lap, so it doesn't put your head in the right space really when you've got so much traffic and it's difficult to really focus on your lap.
Ted Kravitz, down to you.
They're not going to make that mistake at McLaren again, I tell you, Crofty. They're straight out, fourth or fifth car on track. It's Lando Norris. That's a used set of tyres on the Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas and a used set of soft tyres on Lewis Hamilton's
car. Well, they be the tyres, Ted, that they went out with the last lap at the end that they didn't complete.
They would have to have been because the first run was on mediums. Yes. So So yeah, so just bear that in mind when seeing the Mercedes first run. So yeah, I mean, I would imagine if they did want to put the old yellows on for a strategic game, which, as we've said, given these are the hardest three tyres in the range, isn't really a necessity, they would have done it already. So I think that's probably not what they'll do later.
More and more cars filtering out onto the track as Max Verstappen goes for his first flying lap in Q2. As we see how wide he wants to run through that turn 3 banking. Must be so exhilarating for the drivers.
It is like being on a roller coaster, isn't it?
Yeah.
You feel like you're on board with him through that turn 3. That camera is fantastic because you do have the slight vibrations from the front wing movement.
It's a roller coaster you're in control of, which will be, I'm sure, reassuring as he's coming up now to Lewis Hamilton on the racetrack. Hamilton on his outlap. Got enough room around turn 10 to get the power down. 24.1 for the first sector, 23.4 for the middle sector, and that just shows you how much it is ramping up. He's going to be about a second quicker potentially here than he was in Q1.
Yeah, he's pulling a good one. It's funny when you see the front wing how much movement there is on all the flick ups on the front wing, isn't it? It's a lot of movement.
Right, that is a 1:09.0 for Max Verstappen. It was a 1:10.0 for his fastest time in Q1. So I told you it'd be about a second quicker.
And the great thing is now he's done the lap. Yeah. You know, he's done it. He can relax a little bit. We'll see if he runs again, but it's very likely he's going to need to. So it's good getting that back for him.
It shows you how the track's ramping up. Let's see how much more it ramps up as George Russell puts in a time of a 1:10.3, and that pretty much matches his best time for Q1. Lando Norris would like to go a lot faster than he did in Q1, certainly to keep his heart rate a bit more to normal, but that pretty much matches his best time in Q1 as well. That 1:10.4 for Lando Norris, that is not going to be quick enough to get through into Q3 on the evidence that we are seeing so far. On board with Valtteri Bottas, both he and Hamilton on flying laps already. Bottas 0.3 of a second behind Verstappen in the first sector, and about 0.4 in the middle sector as well, as he goes second fastest overall, about 0.6 off the pace. Big difference there between Verstappen and Bottas. Let's look to Hamilton next to cross the line. You'll see the fans in the temporary grandstands filling out the seats on the left-hand side, and he too, about 0.6 down on Verstappen, and that is a bit more as to how we were expecting it based on what we saw in the free practice 3 session.
Yeah, that is a surprise, and they are slightly scrubbed, but they didn't push that tyre in Q1, so there is a little bit of time there, I'm sure, but not 0.6, so it'll be interesting to see if they need to go out again in Q2.
Interestingly, both Giovinazzi and Russell ahead of Lando Norris.
Giovinazzi's been probably the biggest surprise of the qualifying so far. He was P4 in Q1 and P4 at the moment in Q2.
Well, he's fighting for a job for next season. Freddie Vasseur said to him, "You've got 3 races to try and prove yourself." He didn't get a chance at Spa in the race. Let's see what he can do this weekend. By the way, he's finished 13th in the last 3 races as Antonio Giovinazzi. If he does that this weekend, he will join.
So tricky with the wind. Seem to whip it up a little bit.
He will join the other 8 drivers to have the most consecutive race finishes in a place other than first. It's my favourite stat of all time. We'll expand on that during the race tomorrow, potentially. Let's talk about the wind, though, for the moment, Jensen, because we felt it. Very strong breeze. How does that affect you in qualifying?
It's tricky around a circuit like this. On a flat track, someone like Bahrain, who's pretty flat, you basically know where the wind is. Whereas here, certain corners will have the wind because it's so undulating and others won't. So you've really got to feel it when you're out there. And it's tricky because you're out lap slow. The only time you're going to feel it is on a push lap. So for the second run of this session, they'll have a much better understanding of where the wind direction is and which corners it's affecting them.
It's weird, isn't it? These cars, bigger and heavier than they ever were, and seem to be more sensitive to wind than they ever were.
They are. They do so much work on the downforce of the cars and at yaw, but the wind is a very tricky thing to actually do in the wind tunnel, especially if it's gusty. And some teams struggle more with the wind than others.
Stroll about a 1/10 of a second quicker than he managed in his final lap in Q1. That was a lap, a second push lap on a set of soft compound tyres. This is the man who was quickest overall through Q1 and into the chicane. Very neat indeed. For Charles Leclerc, who 1:09.8 was his best time in Q1. Now hits that banking, foot flat to the floor, accelerating all the while out of that banking on turn 14, about 160 miles an hour, crosses the line at about 190 miles an hour, goes second fastest.
The rear of that car looks really strong. I would say there's probably a little bit too much understeer in it, when you're looking for that final 10th, but very stable, going to give the drivers confidence to really push it on entries.
You know when you said to me before we came on air, who's your top 3 for qualifying? And I said, I fancy Charles Leclerc to be in it. He went, okay, interesting. I'm just saying he's up there again.
Anyway, I'm not going to talk about who I had down for top 3 because it's unfair.
Is it? What puts too much pressure on them?
Yeah, exactly. Like they're listening, yeah.
Well, they'll find out after the event. Here's Daniel Ricciardo, needs pace. Down the straight we go. And crosses the line 6th fastest, a little bit more like it. And he seems to be finding pace where his teammate Lando Norris is struggling a touch.
He is. It's unusual for Lando. He's been very quick all weekend, as he is at every weekend. But today in qualifying, the wind maybe is catching him out a little bit more.
6 times overall in this 2021 season. Daniel Ricciardo hasn't made it into Q3. 3 times at the last 5 races as well, and he trails Lando Norris in the qualifying head-to-head, and by 8 races to 4, looking the stronger of the 2 McLaren drivers so far. Now Giovinazzi is the driver at risk.
Good man, good lap mate.
Thanks, that was a good one.
As Pierre Gasly goes 3rd fastest, and rarely is he a driver at risk in Q2, making a habit of getting into Q3. So Giovinazzi's got Russell, Stroll, Norris, Latifi and Tsunoda behind him. At least 3 of those you would expect to be seeing in Q3, and we'll include George Russell in that because he's making a habit of that as well.
He is pretty consistent getting into Q3, exactly.
Gotta love the Saturdays, tech rounds.
George Russell certainly, and he's going out for another run, so they do tend to do this, throw all the tyres at it, let's see if he can do it. He's dropped down to P11 at the moment, George Russell, as you can see on your screen, has got to find 4/10 thick end of 4/10 of a second around such a small, tight, twisty track like this, with the banking and all. Banking looks great, doesn't it, across on the TV? It's fantastic. Such a great surface. Pleased to be here. That's going to be quite difficult for George Russell, but if anyone can, he can. Nicholas Latifi, let's have a word with him and the other Williams as well. Going well so far this weekend. Fair bit off his teammates' pace, but he's gone out as well on the second.
Nicholas Latifi has yet to out-qualify George Russell in that Williams car. Potentially running out of races to get that for the O to go.
He is, but the pace has been there. It's just not been consistent like George. But I think you run a scrub set or a use set at the start of the session, so we can see what we can do now. But the surprise is Lando to be in 13th, and And with Lando, his strength is braking. He's got a lot of confidence in the car and braking, and maybe because of that, he's not able to exploit that strength with the wind we have today.
Lando Norris, double winner from pole here in 2017 in the F3 Euro Series. Let's concentrate though on his mate George Russell and George Russell's teammate Nicholas Latifi. Take us through the rest of this lap with George.
Lovely exit at turn 3 there, getting it nice and straight so you can get the power early. Nice and flat the car's riding through here. A little bit of touching here and there. I love seeing the sparks coming up from the front wing and the floor. Little kick left, right. Bit of understeer there. The front wing touching the ground, as we said before, on the bumps. He does seem like he's got a little bit of understeer in the car through these two corners. The rear end's very stable, but sometimes that's not the quickest way. DRS open, head down. Getting everything out of the car here, braking nice and neat on the way in, and he'll be trying to go on that throttle pedal as soon as possible to get that nice drive out of the chicane there into the second to last corner. Rear stable, he's very, I was going to say he's very aggressive on the way in, and he was.
Too aggressive on the way in, and all the anticipation that was building in that Williams garage comes to nothing. Red flag as George Russell hurtles towards the barriers, but he has managed to keep the car going, and he will limp back to the pits. And the fact that there's a red flag here might just help George Russell. If there's no damage to that car, they can throw another set of tyres on, and he might yet not be out of qualifying.
No, I know, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the red flag was thrown very early, which is good for safety, but it does mean that it helps George.
Sorry guys. Yeah, box.
So on the entry into the final corner, George Russell, he was about 3/10 up through the first two sectors to get out of the bottom 5, lost it, but how big an impact is that into the barriers?
I mean, it looked like it should have done more damage than it did. The barrier kind of went with the car. Yeah, I mean, there's so many details on the edge of the rear wing of on the end plate that you'd think it would have damaged it.
Ted, down to you as George comes in.
It looks all right. Are we sure it wasn't the left rear?
Right rear.
The right rear, sorry.
Right rear.
That took most of the...
The right rear tyre did take most of the impact.
They just wheeled him.
Yeah, I just pushed it too hard in the last corner. Sorry about that.
Gravel trap and the slope there, Ted, would have scrubbed off a lot of the speed.
Well, as they wheeled him back into the car, I took a look at those that rear wheel, and they look okay. But it looks like from the body language that you can see, they want to check the car over, and they have seen something we haven't, and he's not going to go out again. Although I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him jump back in there.
Yeah, but Ted, it's a red flag, so they have this. He has time just to get out of the car, get his composure back together again, and just wait. I don't think it's going to be a lengthy delay here unless there's damage to the barriers, and that's, I'm sure, what race control will want to check before we get going.
The barrier looked fine. It was just the advertising board on top of the barrier, I think, that moved.
So that's got to be put back in place. A couple of minutes, 3 minutes, but it's not going to be a massive delay here. Wind-related that, do you think?
There's a good possibility. It was a gradual slide. You could see him trying to control the slide, and then it just snapped just past the apex.
Right. So George Russell back in the car. That's good news. But if you're not pushing, you're not trying.
Yeah.
He was definitely trying. He was definitely pushing. Let's have a look at it again. So here, got a bit in a tailwind.
Yeah, I mean, he's pushing, he's on the limit. It's going to happen at some point. Do you know what I mean? You can't have a perfect qualifying session every race. He is human, he does make mistakes, and he's finding the limit, and he's just gone a tiny bit over it there, and it could be wind.
Yeah, the wind is coming from kind of left to right as he enters that corner and across the car, as we see a few more replays, but one man who I think can analyse things in much greater detail because he's got all the tools at his disposal is Anthony Davison. He's down at the Skypan.
I know you've seen it a couple of times. Like you say, Crofty, I've got the ability to slow this down and have a look in a little bit more detail. So the run out of turn 12 was okay. One thing I just noticed that he does, though, on the run into 13, I haven't seen any other drivers do this. He just touches the inside curb. And I'm not sure that any other driver's really doing that, or whether he's done that before. He's already losing the rear, but it's that moment when he just touches the curb. It's a bit of a coincidence for me that then he starts to oversteer. I think it's the inside curb that's the culprit. I think he was expecting a little bit more understeer from the car, turned in, just touched that curb, and that's what spun the car around.
Thanks, Ernst. Great spot down there, and with the ability to slow things down as he did. Yeah, it looks a fairly reasonable reason.
He did have quite an aggressive turn in, as I was saying when he spun off. It was quite aggressive.
That's not very Jensen Button-like at all.
For George, it was more aggressive than normal, but you know, I think he's trying to get everything out of the car, and I do know that the Williams doesn't work as well as some others in the windy conditions.
You might have seen the sweepers on the track to get rid of the gravel. Another indication as to why there is a red flag here after George Russell's accident, because as he came back onto the track, obviously the gravel all goes down towards the bottom of that corner, and that's where the drivers in the main are making their entry.
Yeah, he's at the car again. He can't make his mind up.
The Dutch Grand Prix okie-kokie for George Russell. In, out, in, out.
He's still got his helmet on though, so there's still a possibility he'll get back in.
And in terms of the gravel, he has shaken it all about. So men with brooms, marshals out on the track, sweepers there as well, and George Russell in the bottom 5. Along with Lance Stroll, Lando Norris, Nicholas Latifi and Yuki Tsunoda. Why are you looking at me like that?
I'm just thinking, if you ever do want another job, I think we've found one for you.
Puns are us. Let us head down to the pen and let's hear Natalie Pinkham with Sergio Perez.
Well, Checo, no one will be more disappointed than you with what happened today. Obviously the timing was bad. You got stuck behind some traffic in the pit lane as well. Just talk us through it.
Yeah, very disappointed today because we had such a fantastic car. We had everything we possibly could. We were making very good progress. Since we had a big potential for today. Since we missed just a couple of things, you know, we were probably carrying a bit too much fuel for the start of Q1. Our cut-offs were less safe than we thought, and in the end people were making gaps on the pit lane, and I just missed out by a couple of seconds.
So disappointing. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Hugely disappointing for Sergio Perez. Short circuit, not much room to try and build a gap. We see it in Monaco, we see it in Budapest, we've seen it here as well, and by 1 second he failed to get to the line in time before the checker flag came out to start his final flying lap. We're still under red flag conditions here. The session stops while the track gets swept, and what's going on down at Alfa Romeo? Antonio Giovinazzis' side of the garage. Can't quite see through the bodies of people there to see what's going on with the car. So let's bring in Nico Rosberg, one of 2 world champions with us at Sky Sports F1 this weekend. This session building up nicely, Nico. Another red flag though, not ideal for those that would have been out on the track when the red flag came about.
Yeah, definitely not. I think we're going to be messy into the session. Let's see if there's how many people still have new tyres left now to be able to get another lap in at the end. And gutted for George as well. He was on such a great lap and then just carried too much speed and lost it. But it looks like his car is still in one piece, huh? So maybe he can have another shot at it.
Well, we're certainly hoping so. While we're talking British drivers, Lando Norris, where's his pace gone this weekend?
Yeah, it's weird, huh? It's weird. Ricciardo in front is showing what the McLaren can do, and usually Lando is at least there or has been even, 3, 4, 5 tenths up from Daniel. So it's very strange. Don't know what's going on there.
And when we get to the battle for pole, Verstappen and Hamilton separated by 7 tenths at the moment, but that was Verstappen on new tyres, Hamilton on used tyres, or slightly older tyres. Do you still think Verstappen's got a massive pace advantage, or is it closer than we think it could be?
Yeah, it might be closer than we thought, but I still think it's all in Verstappen's hands. I mean, he's driving incredibly brilliantly out there. The car is perfectly suited at the moment for him. You can see it how he's entering, especially like turn 3, that high-risk corner. We saw the speed trace comparison there. I mean, the speed difference was huge compared to Lewis. So I think it's still Verstappen the favorite.
Thanks, Nico. We'll be back with you a little later on. We are going to be back with cars on track in 1 minute's time.
Pierre Gasly, I mean, he just goes under the radar and does his thing, doesn't he? Just always pulls it out.
Why does he go under the radar? Because he does it so frequently.
Because we should talk about him more, maybe.
I tell you what, we'll talk about him more in a moment after Ted.
Jensen, the gas man in the Gasmobile, we talk about him loads.
We've been gassing about Gasly
for
years.
Haven't we, eh? Maybe not this weekend, you're right. Nicholas Latifi, first one lining up at the end of the pit lane, car number 6 in the Williams. He wants to give it another go. Haven't seen George Russell, although they have put the dusty front wing back near his car if they do choose to go on. Looks like it's a brake drum problem on the front right of Giovinazzi's Alfa Sauber.
Someone's got the big hammer out, Ted. Can you hear it?
No, I can't. I can only hear Latifi's engine from where I am. I'm just standing right next to him, as you can see on that shot. But Lando Norris, I mean, he does have the old Mercedes engine, doesn't he? After the one that he took a spin and a knock with at Eau Rouge is being investigated by Mercedes. So that could be part of it. I think it's more to do with just the handling of the car in this middle and final sectors. That's where he's losing 2 or 3 tenths to his teammate Ricciardo. Second car out is Max Verstappen, and I'm sure over Latifi's engine noise, there'll be a cheer when he goes out. Indeed there is.
And George Russell is out of qualifying. He's walking towards the media pens, and here from him in a few moments' time. The red flag bought Williams a little more time to try and make sure that car was fit enough to get on the track, but not enough time, too much damage.
No, it's a shame, isn't it? But it happens. But no, it gives Norris the opportunity now to go and run and see if he can jump into that top 10.
And gives Nicholas Latifi the most excellent of excellent chances he's had yet to out-qualify his teammate.
He was at the end of the pit lane and it looked like he was on used tyres, though.
Nicholas Latifi coming out, on tyres that have been used before, but he will have been out on the track when George Russell had his accident, so not used in anger for a full lap.
But it's going to hurt him. He needs everything. He needs everything out of those tyres and that car to get in the top 10, so it's a shame for him too.
Yeah, it's asking a lot. Track conditions might just have changed a touch as well since we were last out there. The red flag was thrown some 11 minutes ago.
I mean, you do get more dust when you're not driving on the circuit, when it is this windy. You know, we have beaches very close to us, we have gravel traps. There will be more dust on the circuit now, so I'll be surprised if it's as quick as it was before the red flag.
Are you surprised that Lewis Hamilton is coming out onto the track?
No, I think that he has to get out there, just in case. I'm surprised that Max is out on track, but I guess he's got so many sets of tyres that he can.
And has the ability, of course, to cancel any flying lap should he not need to cross the line. Right, here we go with Nicholas Latifi then. Jensen Barton, you work as an advisor with the Williams team. You know Nicholas Latifi well. Take us through this.
I do. He's up through 1A and into turn 2. Nicely there, over to the right-hand side. He's taking a narrower line than most people through there, and it hurt him a little bit on the exit. Bit of a snap of oversteer. He's not turning the car as well. Through the flat-out left, right, easy. Don't really think about that as a driver. Then over the brow of the hill into this blind, long right-hander, super quick. Just a little bit of throttle lift through there.
Oh, that's another Williams, and that is a bigger impact. And that's Nicholas Latifi very much out of qualifying, and that is another red flag. And I dare say that could be this session not resuming as well, because there's only 1 minute and 38 seconds left on the clock. But first and foremost, let's hope Nicholas Latifi's okay.
Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
That is a big impact for Nicholas Latifi. He's okay. He'll be winded, he'll be a little bit battered and bruised. He's out of qualifying, as is Yuki Tsunoda, Lando Norris, Lance Stroll and George Russell, because the session will not be resumed. The bottom 5 won't get the chance to get out of qualifying because of this accident, and a big accident as well.
That is a biggie, and they're always biggies when you go off and it just connects and it doesn't move, it stops suddenly. That would have been a big amount of G-force.
Lando Norris out of qualifying, no Q3 for Lando Norris this weekend. He escaped Q1 by 4/100ths of a second. He didn't get a chance for a final flying lap because of our second red flag of this session. The pace has just disappeared for Lando Norris this weekend.
It's so strange, it really is. But as you said, the wind's picked up. It could be lots of different things, but I definitely put it down to the wind and maybe the way that he drives the car. He's very aggressive under braking, very strong under braking. I think that's hurting him.
Let's have a little look then as he drops downhill into Skyflock.
He's already put a wheel on the dirt there. He's right on the edge or just over, and he does the same thing here. He just gets a wheel on the dirt on the turn-in. There's a car on the inside. It never helps because it kind of disrupts your direction of vision into that corner. And he's gone a little bit too far to the left-hand side, put a wheel on the dirt, and that's what spun him round.
Turn 8, we get to Latifi, and as soon as the rear got away from him, he was heading towards the scene of a barrier. That's a lot of damage to that car as well, and you always have to hope, as we did with Carlos Sainz today in FP3, that the gearbox has survived that impact.
Yeah. I mean, that is a big impact. They never look like much, those accidents, when you hit to the side, but that's a massive amount of G-force. You can't imagine how much that hurts. It feels like everything's being ripped off your bones, like, into the wall, and he'll have a headache for a day or two after that.
So Latifi gets out. We hope that he won't be hit by a 5-place grid penalty to go with it. We'll see how the gearbox is overnight. He'll climb into the medical car, and that's his qualifying over, along with his teammate George Russell, Lance Stroll, Lando Norris and Yuki Tsunoda. Means that Antonio Giovinazzi gets through the Q3 and Verstappen the fastest here at Zandvoort. Nicholas Latifi into Q2 for the second weekend running, hoping to get into the top 10, pushing too hard, and that was the result of the accidents down at turn 8, about 140 miles an hour, and going backwards into the barriers, and that after his teammate George Russell had crashed at turn 13 and approaching the final corner. Russell out too, we can hear from him now. He went straight to the media pen when he knew he couldn't take part in the rest of qualifying, and he spoke to Natalie Pinkham.
Well, George, so disappointing and pretty sort of dramatic finish there to Q2. Just talk us through what happened with you, because you were pushing so hard, it was looking so good.
Yeah, it really was. We weren't quite on the pace this weekend as much as we would have hoped, and I was on a really, really good lap, but I came up the penultimate corner, tight right left, and my tyres were going. I was just pushing too hard, and ultimately I just attacked that last corner too much and lost the rear. So yeah, really sorry to the team, because that's not how we want to end our qualifying.
We hope that you might be able to get back out with the red flag. It isn't to be. How much damage is there to this tyre?
There's a bit of damage on the rear suspension, so there shouldn't be any penalties, no issues. Nothing the guys wouldn't be able to fix overnight. So as I said, sorry to the team, because I mean at that point it would have promoted me into the top 10. How that would have panned out later in the session, I don't know, but I think yeah, I just felt like I had to go for it and see what I could have done, but not how I want to finish my qualifying.
Waiting for confirmation, but it doesn't look like the session will be restarted, so no one can improve on the times that they did before your crash. So it means that Norris and your teammate will both be out as well. It's sort of tricky going into the race at a track that you can't overtake at in such a position, but what are your thoughts about that tomorrow?
It's a circuit that you will really struggle to overtake, but nobody knows how the tyres are going to react. There's so many right-hand corners on this circuit, so that front left tyre and the rear left tyre is going to take an absolute pounding. So that's going to make it really tricky. Some people have kept 2 medium tyres for tomorrow. Maybe they're thinking of a 2-stop. Some people haven't. They're still maybe thinking of a 2-stop, or maybe people are going to risk it and go for the 1-stop. Because it's a new experience and we only did 12 laps in a row on Friday, we've got 72 tomorrow, so we don't know how that's going to pan out.
Okay, we'll go well tomorrow. Thanks for your time.
Don't forget, George Russell gets a free choice of tyres.
Michael, they're holding
those
cars with the blankets on for a very long time.
P11. So actually, that might
Sorry,
be.
Jonathan, what do you mean?
Two Mercedes.
That was the wreckage of Nicholas Latifi's car as he then walks to the medical centre. We can head down to the Sky Pad and Ant.
Okay, I'll take a voice to have a look.
What could have been for Williams? I mean, it's amazing how quickly things can turn around in racing. Never fails to surprise me. And yeah, this was certainly a surprise for George's teammate Latifi here. You can see on turning how close his wheel is to the left-hand side of the track. And also, watch out for the angle of his head as well. You can see how tired he's getting. Look, his head leans right over at that moment. And I just wonder if it was just, you know, that lack of concentration just winding it back a little bit for you. He's already struggling through turn 7. Look, leaning on the headrest, and it just you're not quite in control when you're physically aching and finding it hard like that. The off-board shot, as Jensen Wright picked up, shows the moment where his left rear gets onto the grass. That's the shot that we're looking for to zoom in for you there. Clearly on the grass there, and also sparking on the front wing. So such an unfortunate moment for Williams, just in a couple of minutes gone by in qualifying. Back to you, Crofty.
Thanks ever so much, and we're waiting for the start of Q3. We have a 5-minute notice.
With the blankets on for a very long time.
Sorry, Jonathan, what do you mean?
Two Mercedes. We're doing what we've been talking about previously, which is holding the car with blankets over.
Take a voice to have a look.
They're certainly not looking for a gap on the track.
Right, so this is the Red Bull pit wall, having a little look into the Mercedes garage and raising their concerns about holding blankets over the tyres for too long. Now, the FIA have told teams they're not allowed to do that. Affects pressures in the tyres, affects tyre temperatures as well. The tyre temperatures are monitored whilst the tyres are in the blankets. Sometimes you might want to bring those pressures down or up to suit whatever the ambient temperature is. What a race control. What does Michael Massey do about that sort of situation?
Yeah, it's tricky. So just for people who don't know, there is a minimum tyre pressure that you can have with these tyres, and you always want to be lower than that tyre pressure. That's why they do such slow out laps, so they don't raise the pressures too much and don't put too much temperature in the tyres.
So the minimum tyre pressures for this weekend, it's all dictated by Michael Massey and his race director's events notes. Christian Horner is with us on the Red Bull pit wall. Do you think Mercedes are up to something there, Christian? Was that the inference of that message from Jonathan Wheatley, your sporting director?
Well, you know, obviously we've had it pointed in our direction on numerous occasions, so there's stringent rules now about tyre blankets holding them because of the criticality of the pressures with the Pirellis. So I think he was just bringing that to Michael's attention.
Christian Jensen here. Fantastic lap by Max in Q2. What was the reason for going out at the end? Just for him to have another run, and he's got a set of tyres anyway?
Well, yeah, I mean, the wind, you know, is moving around a bit, and we think that's maybe what brought George out. So just wanted him to go out and have a little look before Q3. So it was a bit of a sight. He was up actually in the first sector, but then unfortunately the red flag. But yeah, that was the reason behind it.
5 minutes notice will be given before the start of Q3. We've seen 2 red flags already. Wouldn't be at all surprised if we got another one. Is this all factored in to your run plan for this qualifying, where banker laps might just be a necessity because of the risk of red flags here?
But you've got to get a lap in, so and then obviously then the pressure then either accelerates or decelerates on the second lap, but you want to get a banker in. So I think everybody obviously with 2 sets of failure will be looking at getting out, get on with it.
I'm not surprised. Christian, thanks ever so much for joining us. We'll be back with you throughout the race tomorrow, I'm sure. 21.5 PSI, the minimum pressure for the slick tyres at the front, 21 PSI at the rear, which I'm sure is a few PSI more than the teams would like, because the less PSI, the more the tyre could be a bit squat and have more contact patch with the ground, a bit more squashy. Is that the word I'm looking for?
And less overheating.
Less overheating. Out on the North Sea, boats are bobbing around as the party start there. They are a long way offshore. They'll almost be doing broadcasting pirate radio in the 1960s from that distance off the shore here. Ted Kravitz is in the thick of the action though, Ted.
I am, yes, with DJ Bingo, or whoever this guy is with the with the red jacket, who's getting the crowd.
Hey, it's DJ Tiesto tomorrow, Ted.
Oh, is it? Right, excellent. Yes, my favourite of all the Dutch.
During the Notebook, Tiesto will be serenading you.
Okay, good. Yes, if you keep going that way, you'll reach Lowestoft, that shot you were looking at earlier. So it's a long swim, so I wouldn't recommend it. But I've asked Mercedes if they have any response to what Jonathan Wheatley was saying. I was almost surprised that Michael Massey, the race director, had to ask which team Jonathan Wheatley was complaining about. but you know, I mean, listen, it's fair's fair. If Wheatley believes that this one rule is not being applied to all the teams equally, then he has absolutely a right to question it. But I haven't got a full response from Mercedes. Maybe we'll catch that up later. Just a thought on why we saw both Williams off there properly. It was always the way, wasn't it, earlier this year, that they have this sort of peaky downforce, don't they? It works in a wind tunnel, they get good figures on it, but when it's in traffic or in windy conditions, it does tend to go away in a very sort of unexpected way from the drivers. I think they've done a lot of work to fix that over the year of Williams. And you know, the last time out, the qualifying of George and Spa kind of proved that. But you think it was that caught them out? Maybe Jensen got a view on that as well?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, with Latifi, it was him putting a wheel on the dirt. But no, it is tricky out there, and the guys always say that the car is a little bit trickier in the windy conditions. But I personally feel with Latifi, he's trying to get everything out of the car. It's the only way for him to get through to Q3. You had the car on the inside, it didn't help his eye line looking into the apex, and he's just steered a little bit too far left. I mean, you look at it and you go, well, why did he do that? He should have kept away from the edge of the circuit, but he's almost, you know, he's doing 160 miles an hour at that point.
Ted, this is your 4-minute warning before we start Q3. You can go back to the Redcoats and DJ Bingo for a while and to your serenade. They were playing Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer to a dance beat a little while ago. That got us all going, it has to be said. Out on the track, though, we did see at the end of Q1 some very slow-moving cars. Sebastian Vettel was on a flying lap. This is the scene that awaited him going into turn 13 as Mazepin cut across and blocked him, and Mick Schumacher, Mazepin's teammate, was right there as well. The two Hasses went out in Q1, as did Sebastian Vettel. Let's hear from him now.
Where you got held up by the two Hasses?
That's not much I can do, but overall we didn't have the pace, and I think when we were on track we were not quick enough, so for sure we could have timed the last run a bit better, but yeah, obviously disappointing.
And surprising, presumably, because I would have thought...
Good luck.
surprising, the lack of performance?
Yeah, I think in the practice sessions it looked okay, but we didn't make a step in the afternoon.
Bad luck, thank you. Nikita, just tell us what happened with Sebastian.
Yeah, well, a disaster happened. As you know, Formula 1 teams, one weekend you're the first car, next weekend you're the second. So I was going to be the first car this weekend, which normally gets the top priority, is able to dictate the pace for the outlap around the drivers around, but your team driver isn't able to overtake you. Well, it happened the second time that he overtook me, backed me up, and intercept. So yeah, I'll have a word with the team to see why that happened.
Okay, thank you.
So an explanation as from Nikita Mazepin as to why there was a bit of a kerfuffle going on between the two Haas drivers, but that is absolutely no consolation to Sebastian Vettel. I don't think the stewards are going to accept that either.
No, they're not. I mean, having teammates together on track that close is never a good thing anyway. But they should be informed on a car on a flying lap. They should have moved out of the way, or judge the timing a little bit better.
Can I just, in a bid for some common sense, just say it's about time people stopped trying to make a gap in Formula 1, because we get this all the time. Why don't the drivers just say, look, we're all being done by this at some stage, should we stop doing it?
Well, the problem is you need to get a gap though. They can't follow a car through the last corner and in the turbulent air. The problem is these days, if you're within sort of 3 or 4 seconds, you're getting turbulent air. Hopefully this will change a little bit next year, will help, but yeah, you're getting very affected. The problem is you also need to be out right at the end of the session. We've just seen that. You know, the last car has the circuit in the best condition, so there's a lot of risk and reward in the last part of qualifying, but they have to go for it.
Right, so top 10, and we've had 6 red flags in 4 hours of track action in terms of F1 here in Holland this weekend. Who knows? We might just get more in the Q3 session. It's all very tense down in the garages because there's nothing that Toto Wolff can do to affect things from here on in. It is down to the drivers on a driver's circuit, on a real racer's circuit, as Lewis Hamilton described it yesterday. We have a top 10 that includes Antonio Giovinazzi for the first time since Monaco, and the second time this season. 2 Alpines of Ocon and Alonso locked at 6 apiece in the qualifying head-to-head. 2 Ferraris of Leclerc and Sainz, and Leclerc has been looking very icy and very racy in this session. 1 McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo. Lando Norris's pace has disappeared, but Ricciardo is right in the mix of it. 2 Mercedes of Hamilton and Bottas, and 1 Red Bull and 1 AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly and Max Verstappen. Now I know who the majority of the crowd would love to see on pole here in about 11 and a bit minutes time, but for you, Jenson Button, who does look the likely candidate? Is it Max Verstappen?
It's easy to say Max. You know, all weekend he's been super strong, but Lewis, you know, he will be closer. He's not 7/10 a lap slow around here, and the car isn't either. So I'm looking forward to him having a bit more pace and pushing Max a bit harder. But this is such a weird moment for drivers. You know, had such a long break between Q2 and Q3. It's the adrenaline is already through the roof, but this just heightens it like you wouldn't believe. So they're going to be quite stressed. Their bodies mentally are going to be quite stressed, and it all adds up to an exciting Q3, I think.
And if you've got a Sky Q box, you can press the red button and watch the highlights of this qualifying session so far, alongside the live pictures from Q3. And with the clock ticking down, it's time to get some cars out on the track. And who's going out there quite early on? Max Verstappen, already on the track, Daniel Ricciardo and Antonio Giovinazzi. But as Christian Horner said, get that banker lap in. You've got to be in it to win it, and they're sending Verstappen out a lot earlier than they normally would.
Yeah, I think it's because they do have that advantage, that pace advantage they have had all the way through qualifying. So doing complete, you know, it's the right thing. The issue is when it gets to the second run in Q3, do they wait until the last moment? We'll have to wait and see.
Because these are the provisional laps. This is the insurance policy, as it were, for a little bit later on. Look at this. Because it's such a short lap, we see gaps being built from the pit lane exit onwards. Don't often see that.
No, and you need to look at Daniel. Daniel's halfway around the lap already. He has a really big chance of catching them when he's on his flying lap and they're on their warming up lap.
Ricciardo was the first driver out of the pits after out-qualifying Lando Norris for the second straight race. Norris leading the way in Q1 and Q2 in Spa, and then had that big accident at the start of Q3. Verstappen, the only driver to start in the top 3 at every race this season. In fact, he's the only driver to start in the top 5 at every race this season. And he has taken pole in 5 of the last 6 races. And he is... It's a windy enough day without all the waving that's going on in the grandstands as well. There's probably a freak gust coming from the grandstand, trying to warm up his tyres. Track temperature 35 degrees, air temperature round about 20 degrees. It is a beautiful day by the seaside here in Zandvoort, but what's Max Verstappen got then? Can he put his car on provisional pole? Here he is with Jenson Button.
Into turn 1, lovely line, sorry, we should say Tarzan. Up on the exit of Tarzan, over the curb, using all the track through here. Turn 2, into turn 3. He's so aggressive on the entry there. Fantastic, good exit, good traction. And now it's just waiting for that long right-hander. Going up through the gears, trying to get everything just perfect through there. And with a little lift on the way here, touching the white line of the apex, using most of the road on the exit. Through the right here, a little bit of understeer there. That's probably down to the wind. And then the slower corner, missed the apex a tiny bit, but he's going to move the car to the right very quickly. A little bit of understeer on the entrance, doesn't even hit the apex there. Don't know if you need to. DRS zone now, fully open, full power, heavily braking for the chicane. He gets it turned in nicely, a little bit of rear movement on the entry, yeah, he's pushing hard, a little bit of rear movement there. Second to last corner, it's twitchy, and we've seen with Max when the car's a little bit twitchy, he is super fast, and I think we're going to see that right now.
No Dutch driver has ever started higher than 14th for a Dutch Grand Prix. Max Verstappen in the 1 minute 8 seconds, and that has delighted the Dutch crowd here. He was a couple of tenths up on both Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton through the first sector. He was 2 tenths up on Valtteri Bottas through the middle sector. He was a tenth up on this man Lewis Hamilton through the middle sector, pushing Max Verstappen and maybe pushing Mercedes to places they just can't go here, because Valtteri Bottas finishes 3 tenths behind Verstappen as we watch Hamilton coming off the banking and the final corner. Is he the man that can deny Verstappen pole? Not on this evidence. He's 3 and a bit tenths off Verstappen, and he's behind his teammate Valtteri Bottas, who by the way is the only man ever to win the F3 Masters at Zandvoort in consecutive years. It's a track he likes. Leclerc goes 4th fastest, puts that Ferrari on the 2nd row, and ahead of Alonso, Giovinazzi, Ricciardo and Ocon, as now Carlos Sainz goes 5th fastest, a second off the pace, and Pierre Gasly crosses the line as the last driver to complete his first lap in Q3 and goes 4th fastest. And once again, it's another storming lap that's worthy of a cheer, let alone a polite ripple of applause from the AlphaTauri garage from Pierre Gasly.
Super impressive lap by Pierre Gasly, but looking at Lewis's lap, he did have a couple of snaps on exits, which would have cost him a bit of time. There isn't a lot you can do, obviously, once you're into qualifying, but he'll be playing around with different settings to try and help that rear on an exits, and there's more time to come from Lewis, I think.
He is the first man, Max Verstappen, to put his car into the 1 minute 8s here at Zandvoort this weekend. It's a big margin of 3.5 tenths. More time to come from Lewis, but that's quite a lot of time.
It is a big margin, and yeah, Max's lap wasn't perfect either. No, he was pushing that car very hard, but the times will get quicker for everyone in this next session. They had a lot of downtime before this run, but they'll be heading out pretty soon, and I think they're probably all going to pick up sort of 2 to 3 tenths.
The good news for Mercedes, who lead the Constructors' Championship going into this race, is that they've got 2 cars, second and third, in the top 3.
And there's a big gap to P4. You know, there's another 4 tenths behind Lewis back to Pierre Gasly, so that's quite a big margin. We didn't see that through Q1 and Q2, but they're obviously pushing the car a little bit more than Mercedes and the Red Bull.
Because the big thing that Red Bull have got, and there's nothing they can do about this, is that Sergio Perez is going to be he's only 16th on the grid. Nothing Red Bull can do about that. So Verstappen will go into his own race.
car is set up perfectly or not, it's working well.
वक्त की ताकत उस पर बैठने वाले में नहीं होती, उस पर बैठाने वाले में होती है।
Good position, 5th and 6th. AlphaTauri with Pierre Gasly once again. Super run by Pierre Gasly.